Hey, this is Dr. Drew. And did you know that it is not normal to go to the bathroom 3 to 5 times a week? But if you look online, the definition for regular bowel movements is somewhere between 3 and 5 times a week. But let me tell you, if you're not eliminating every single day, you are going to feel like crap. So if you eat every day, you should be defecating every day. And if you don't, all the toxins and waste and byproducts in your system just sit there and get reabsorbed for a second time, and you're going to feel bloated and heavy, and it may lead to headaches, and you're not going to feel and function at 100%. So that's the goal, 1 bowel movement a day. Occasionally it is normal to have up to 2 a day, but once it starts getting into that 3, 4, 5, then we got different problems to talk about. But chronic constipation is one of the most common things I see in practice, so we're going to go through a step-by-step approach because it is so poorly treated, and the treatments and recommendations around it are so outdated that if you actually look at the research around a lot of the claims, it's completely backwards. So I just want to set the record straight. So if you're dealing with constipation, then you're going to want to follow along because this is important stuff. The gut is the hub of health. I love talking about this stuff. That might be weird to some people, but if your gut's functioning and happy, you will be functioning and happy. So this is critical. So the goal is daily, should be easy, shouldn't cause any pain. Obviously hemorrhoids and straining and bleeding is a really common piece that comes with chronic constipation, and there's psychogenic elements to it as well, where people will have fear of public bathrooms, or they don't want to go at work, or they don't want to go at school. And so there's a few layers we have to peel back, but the first one, and I always like to start here, is hydration. Your digestive tract's like a river, and it's really hard to concentrate stools and smoothly eliminate it from your system if it's bone dry. So you need to get a liter per 50 pounds body weight every single day in your system. So do your body weight divided by 50, that's how much water you need to be drinking. Also need to make sure you get enough salts and electrolytes with it. Salt helps draw water towards it, so this is a good way to get more water into the colon so you can actually bulk up your stools. So that's pink salt, white sea salt, and a little bit of table salt. Add it to your food. Don't miss that part, okay? Exercise is a very important one too. If you're sedentary and sluggish and not moving, your bowel's gonna be the same. Okay, so you need to move, whether it's walk and exercise and resistance train and run and jostle and move your viscera and organs around, and that'll help promote regular bowel movements. So that's 3 to 4 exercise sessions a week, but daily walking should be non-negotiable. Fiber, I put a big question mark in front of and behind, because most people with chronic constipation are told increase fiber, increase fiber, increase fiber. But the analogy is this: pretend that there's a traffic jam on the highway and then you want to put more cars on the road. Is that going to help that traffic jam? No, it's going to make it a lot worse. So if you have a traffic jam in your digestive tract and you just pile down a bunch more fiber, and then on top of that you're not drinking enough water, what do you think is going to happen? That's going to make you bloated. That's going to cause more of a backlog, and it's not going to fix the problem. You know why? Because countless people have sat in my office and said, all they told me to do was increase fiber, and I did that, and it either didn't work or it made them worse. So stop it with the Metamucil and the psyllium husk and tons of, hemp parts and chia seeds. And those things are good in the right amount, but I can assure you, if you have chronic constipation, it will not be fixed by doubling or tripling your fiber. In fact, it's going to make it a whole lot worse. So I encourage people with constipation to do some food logging and see, how many grams a day am I getting? Is it 25? Is it 40? Is it 50? I've done recalls on certain patients where they're up around like 45, 50, and I'm like, you're 120 pounds. Like, why are you taking 50 grams of fiber in a day and you're still having bad bloating, pains, distension, and constipation? Like, cut that in half. If you're down around 10, 15, 20 grams, and you feel 10 times better, don't have to buy into this hype that you have to have 25 or 35 grams of fiber every single day. Just simply not the case, okay? In fact, there's lots of research showing that the lower you bring your fiber, the better your bowel symptoms are. They looked at fiber intake, whether it was high, moderate, low, or even 0. There were certain people that went to 0 grams of fiber, and all their gut symptoms just melted away. Kind of blew my mind, because in school I learned the more fiber the merrier. And then this came out a few years ago, and there was actually an MD out of Australia that did a full seminar and presentation on it. And I watched this, and it just blew my mind. And just do some experimenting to see where your sweet spot is, because it's probably a lot lower than you're currently doing. That's the quick and dirty on fiber. Thyroid issues should be mentioned. So if you're dealing with hypothyroid, or you have hypothyroid and constipation, it could be linked, because the thyroid regulates metabolism and motility of the digestive tract system-wide. If it's not optimized, or maybe you're on Synthroid and it's not converting properly to T3, which is the active thyroid hormone, if there's still some low-grade subclinical or undiagnosed thyroid, that could be why you're constipated. So you always have to think, okay, it's proper full workup for a chronic constipation case. Check the thyroid, do a thyroid panel, make sure that's all nicely dialed, because if anything's out there, it could be contributing to your constipation, okay? Another one is laxative abuse. So people will take Senna, they'll take Cascara, and they'll rely on this stuff to have bowel movements, and they'll maybe be at that 3rd, 4th, 5th day without a bowel movement and just cave and take the laxatives. And I get it, because at that point you just want to burst and you feel awful. But chronic laxative abuse can cause gastroparesis, where it slows down even more. So now it's totally counterproductive to what you're trying to do. You don't want to induce gastroparesis. You need this tube to be squeezing stuff through you. So you never want to use what are called irritating laxatives for longer than 10 days in a row. And that's your Senna and Cascaras, right? Because they're very hard. They agitate and irritate the bowel to the point where evacuation happens, but that doesn't help motility and proper smooth functioning of the smooth muscle of your intestinal system. So there are some better, more gentle things that I'm going to go through here that are osmotic laxatives, which means they draw water into the colon. They're not irritant laxatives. And so these are some game changers I found for people, because I don't love the Senna and Cascara consistently. Once in a while, maybe there's some traveler's constipation, or it's just really bad and it's not something you normally do. I mean, go for it. But chronic use with those, bad news, okay? So just keep that in mind. The biggest thing you need to get with chronic constipation is there's usually some form of bad bug buildup in your system. So some dysbiosis, some bacterial overgrowth, some yeast, some parasites. Something's going on. You need to do some kill phase. You need to do some eradication. And we need to smooth and level out the playing field. This is important. One of the big things they found in research is there's a lot of methane-producing species that can overgrow in your small intestine. When those methane-producing bugs, the bacteria, mesh with your food, particularly your fiber, gas is released. This methane gas is like throwing the emergency brake of your system. The more methane gas, the harder that brake gets pulled, and that whole tube and the motility and the movement through your digestive tract just grinds to a halt. So we will often, for chronic constipation, do a SIBO breath test. It's a 3-hour lactulose test, and this will detect how much methane gas you're producing. And if you're producing a lot of methane gas, that needs to be treated, because that's what's putting the brakes on the system. It'll also check in that SIBO breath test for hydrogen overgrowth, which is a little more correlated with loose stools, diarrhea, but it's important to clear out both, because there's some bad bugs going on in there, and that is what's meshing with your food, and it's causing motility issues, and that's a big driver of chronic constipation. So the bad bugs need to go. The SIBO video I did actually explains all this in detail, so just click the link here we're going to put in, because I've actually explained this in full detail in a video I did a few weeks ago, so check that one out. Big thing too is, if you look at the motility of the system, there's sweeping actions that happen. So when you eat food, you're getting a digestion and absorption. It's kind of moving through you. And if you don't give that food adequate time to get from the stomach to the intestines and move its way through you, and then you eat, that process that was happening with the food below kind of grinds to a halt. So years ago, I used to suggest you should eat every 2 or 3 hours. But if you actually look at the research around the motility of the system and how it processes food through your digestive tract, you want to give it some time. So ideally, you should be eating every 4 to 5 hours, 3 meals a day, maybe a snack sprinkled in there at some point. But this eating and snacking every few hours or every 2 hours is really bad for motility. And then that doesn't have adequate time for that one meal to get processed. It gets halfway through, and then you throw a bunch more in the stomach, and now it's got to revert energy back up top to start breaking down the next meal. And so you need to make sure you eat enough at each meal so that you're not dead starving couple hours later, so that you can actually stretch it 4 to 5 hours. This is really important. It's hard to fix motility, bacterial overgrowths, bad bug buildups, if that sweeping action is not happening properly. So it really gets jammed up if you're eating too often. Now, this is by no means me saying have massive fasting gaps between meals. I do find that intermittent fasting can be really hard on certain people, especially when their health's not at 100%. So I'm not saying go 8 hours between meals, but that 4 to 5 hours seems to be a sweet spot, so play with that. Now we should talk about some things that work and what actually is a good approach when it comes to chronic constipation. So obviously, I already mentioned test and eliminate small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. Magnesium, so this is a really, really good, safe one. So magnesium, most people are deficient in. It's not really rich in the food supply anymore. So I do like 400, 600, 800, maybe even up to 1,000 milligrams of magnesium a day. You should have most of it at bedtime. So say someone settles in at a dose of 600, they'll do 400 at bed, 200 in the morning. Occasionally people need to maybe do 400 to get their 800, but you're trying to take a decent amount at bedtime, because what this does is it's an osmotic laxative. So high amounts of magnesium at once before bed draw water into the colon and trigger a bowel movement 7 to 8 hours later, which should coincide with you waking up. So play with that. Whether it's 400, 600, or 800 milligrams of magnesium bisglycinate at bedtime is a wonderful, natural, gentle way to keep the bowels regular. I should also mention that once you do the kill phase and eradication, reseeding with probiotics can also be really good. It's one of the safest things we do with kids when they're constipated. Just give them a little bit of probiotics. Same thing for adults. Magnesium and probiotic can be a potent but simple combo for getting people regular in the morning. Another game changer I found a couple of years ago is a Cape aloe extract. So most people know aloe for like juice for the digestive tract, or maybe for a sunburn, but Cape aloe in a capsule, I think it's the latex of the plant, works incredibly well for constipation. It draws water, it's an osmotic laxative, again, very different than the irritant laxatives, Senna and Cascara, that I don't want you using a lot. And 1 to 2 capsules of the Cape aloe is awesome. I bring it all the time when I travel because, dehydration, time zone changes, flights, tends to throw my gut off. And so the first few nights I'm taking it and boom, I'm regular the next day. So I encourage anyone dealing with constipation to look into Cape Aloe from Sloth MD. We'll flash a few slides up on the screen for that. So Cape Aloe Sloth MD, high potency magnesium bisglycinate at bedtime, 2 really good options. And then when it comes to diet, I go through what's called the high and low gas fruits and veggies. Want to make sure that if you're dealing with constipation, you get rid of all the high gas veggies. So this is the cruciferous vegetables, which is broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. Delete those completely because they are some of the hardest to break down. They're high gas and they have a lot of roughage and fiber, so just delete the cruciferous. You also want to reduce beans, legumes, and lentils. Get those suckers out because, again, a lot of fiber, a lot of roughage, and just cause bloating and distension in most people. Focus on steaming and cooking your veggies because that's just a little easier on your system. And things like carrots, steamed spinach, zucchini, tomatoes, peppers, celery, cucumber, maybe a little bit of leaf lettuce, things like that. That's kind of like your veggie staples, but get rid of the high gas ones I just mentioned, and your stomach will be doing a whole lot better, I assure you. Okay, with that formula alone, I've really helped change people's guts. And then the other one is bowel habits. So you can't be rushed in the morning. You can't sit down on the toilet for 30 seconds and think, well, I gave it a shot and nothing happened. Because if you miss that window, if you miss the defecation reflex, or you feel like you need to go and you ignore it, or you put it off, you're constipating yourself and you're causing your body to become toxic. So you can't do that. You can't ignore those signals. When nature calls, you have to excuse yourself and go. And you need to make sure that you're not ignoring that. The other big thing is look into a squatty potty. So this is a device, it's a little stool that tucks underneath your toilet, but when nature calls and it's time to have a bowel movement, you can actually place your feet up on this device. What it does is it gets your knee higher than your hip. This causes a relaxation of the muscles in and around the rectum and anus to just relax so that you can have a smooth, easy bowel movement. So getting the squatty potty, as much as it seems like just sort of a gag gift and a novelty item, it works incredibly well. It gets the knee higher than the hip, relaxes the muscles around the rectum and colon, and it almost just kind of slides out of you with minimal effort. So if you're dealing with chronic constipation, if you found this helpful or know that it would benefit someone close to you, please share it with them. If you have any questions, just drop a comment below. And as always, thank you for watching.